Today we're going to go over a little bit of differences in the John Deere round fenders. That's a 64 model here. It's a 3863 serial number, pretty low in production on 64. But I'll go over some of the differences what the 64 has, the 63, some of the 65 through 67s. Probably start in the back on the rear hitch plate on 63, 4, and 5. This has got an extension on it. They sold this piece here to bring this ball out farther, but on 63, 4, and 5, your rear hitch plate stopped here, so it was just a thin line that ran across with a hole right in the center. And the later models, they extended that, like on this 67. It's the full size, which basically does what that plate, that aftermarket plate on that one does. It brings this ball here out farther to put different, different trailers and stuff on it, so you have more room. Let's see, on the 63 and 4, you've got 3-bolt hubs. It's held together with a, instead of having a snap ring, it's got a set screw that holds that hub. The wheels are 5-bolt, but yeah, John Deere, they figured 3-bolt was the way to go, so the early models were 3-bolt, and they upgraded those to 5-bolt when they started pulling more weight with them. 64 does have it's got the metal fenders. 63's had fiberglass. Not very many examples left today because most of them are broke by people getting off the tractors. They, put their hand on the fender and it'd crack it or break it. Let's see, shifter, transmission, 3-speed on 63 and 64. Basically 3 speeds forward. You didn't have the granny low like you do in the 5, 6, and 7s, and you don't have a shift quadrant or a shifter cover like you do in the 5 through 7s. Let's see, serial numbers. 3, 4, and 5, they start out with 110. There's no type codes like on the later models. You've got type codes, which tells what options each tractor had. All you had was 110, which told you what series tractor it was, and your serial number, which would give you your production. I did hear that 63 and 4, the early models, had the pink or red choke and throttle knobs. Not positive on that, just what I've heard. 63 and 4, at least early 64s did not have a generator light. Some of the later model 64s, I'm sure they could have had it up in the 10,000 range serial numbers. The early model did not. Warning labels or directions. 63 and 4, I know, didn't have them. There was no directions on telling you what to do with the how to use the emergency brake. 65, I don't think 5 and 6 did. I know I had a 66, and it had a label here which told you how to use the emergency brake, but I'm not sure if it had it here or not. I know 64 does not. Shifter, the sticker for your shift pattern, that was present on just the 3-speed version, 63 and 64. Both on footboards, that was the same in 63, 4, 5, and 6. 67 started welding the boards on, which the 67's had the weld on footboards. Moving up, gas caps. 63 and 4 I know are different. I don't know about 65. 63 and 64, if you take this cap off this 64 and you try to put this cap on this 67, you'll notice that it won't work. Vice versa, if you try putting the gauge on this one, it doesn't work. Your neck is smaller on the later models than it is on the early models. Upper hood supports, or your side hood supports. You'll notice on this one, you've got this piece of metal in here. It's double walled from the top all the way to the bottom. After 64, for some reason, John Deere started making them, you can see it down in there, it stops. It stops down in here, which is about halfway up the support. You lose your double wall thickness. Let's see, decks. 64 is a stamped steel deck. 63 was the only year that did the fabricated deck. After the 63 model year, when the 64s came out, they all had the stamped steel deck. I think that's it up here. Oh, spark plug wire. 63 and 64 did not have a boot. 65 and up did have a boot. Air filters are the same. Engine covers are the same. Generator cover. 64, I heard 64 is different. I can't see a difference in this one and my 66. 67 did have a, it's got 3 lines right here. I call it a sunburst. That's 67 only with the 3 lines. As far as I know, 64 through 66 is the same cover. I did hear something about depth. Not positive on that, so I'm not going to tell you for sure that's it. 64, they moved this this lift rod for the deck. They moved it to a lower position. Instead of being up here, it's down at the bottom, and they went with a longer handle for more leverage, because as the implements started becoming available for these, people had trouble because, you know, you had a handle that was 12 inches long and you didn't have the leverage to lift it, and a lot of times you'd break that handle off here or you'd strip it out. So in 64, they changed the position of where this handle is mounted. I did hear this lift bar is different on some of the years. I'm not positive on that. This is 64. I have seen some bends in some of them. Not sure if they're supposed to be there, but this one is straight. Generator's pretty much the same. Front axle, you'll notice it's got collars, and it's got a roll pin holding the spindle to the front axle. 65, 6, and 7, they had snap rings. And also the front axles, 65 through 67 was a stamped steel axle, or a cast steel axle. 63 and 64 was a tubular type axle that was welded together. So it was actually a fabricated axle on the front of the 63 and the 64s. Front draft plate. 63 and 64, no dimples. Yeah, normally you'd have dimples. Most of them you see have dimples right here that give you clearance for this pin to actually set in. The 63 and 64, the front covers were smooth. The 65, 6, and 7, they had the dimples. Let's see, front rims. 63 and 4, you've got dimples on the narrows. There's your dimples. You've got 3 of those. 65, 6, and 7 narrows did not have the dimples. Let's see, PTO cover. 63 and 64 on the PTO cover. There's a rod that's actually welded inside this cover. Notice it's smooth. There's no dimple right here. Just keeping the belt off the cover. 65, 6, and 7. It was actually stamped into the cover. So instead of having the rod, it's got the indentation in the cover itself. PTO directions. 65, 6, and 7 had them. 63 and 64 did not have the directions on the PTO, how to operate it. On a 63 and 64, mine doesn't have it, but when they produce these tractors, that pulley right there in the center, coming off the transmission, those were cast iron, and they had a lot of issues with getting these tractors stopped. It gave you a flywheel effect with the weight of that pulley spinning. When you applied the brake, which is over there on the other side, when the brake band grabbed the brake hub, it had so much inertia from this large pulley spinning, you had problems getting the tractor stopped. Also, some of the early models, like the 63s, early 64s, they had an additional brake shoe that was wood and would ride against the barrier pulley. I've never seen examples of this, but I have heard they were available that way. Engine, 63 and 64, probably can't see it, but down there next to the coil there's a square pipe plug. The 63 and 64, they drained out the front of the engine. 65, 6, and 7 drained out the bottom of the engine. Same square pipe plug, but bottom versus the front. Dipstick, 63 and 64 dipsticks. This actually should be a square plug, pipe plug with a dipstick on the bottom of them. A A lot of these models had replacement blocks, this being one of them. Still has the early model pan, but has a replacement block that has a normal dipstick instead of the pipe plug dipstick. I think that pretty much covers it. I'm probably forgetting something. Matter of fact, I know I'm forgetting something. Here's this other tractor. It's a 67. This is a 112, so the engine's different. It's Tecumseh instead of the Kohler, but pretty much the tractor is going to be pretty much the same. This has got a snow thrower in the front of it, and on the 112s they ran a double pulley because they ran a, you had the option of buying a 46-inch cut deck, and they ran a double belt off the PTO. It gave it more, it had more grip, you know, to pull the larger deck. But what you can do is when you run the snowblower, the snow thrower, instead of having to put the extra pulley that hooks up here on the 110s, this has already got it, so your belt runs true. You don't need that extra pulley. There's your decal I was talking about. Gives you directions. 60, I think 66 and 67 had these. I'm not sure about 65. Deck adjustment. On the 64s, 63s, you had no deck adjustment for your deck height. They had an assembly that would fit on here, and it would stop at these detents on this quadrant to, you know, it would stop your deck whatever level you wanted to drop it. 65, 6, and 7, they ran the adjustment right here on the center of the frame. There's your shifter quadrant that was only available on the 4-speed transmissions, 65 through 67. Rear lift pieces, they're all the same on both tractors. I think that's pretty much it. If I missed something, just comment below. Let me know what I missed. I'm sure there's something I didn't pick up, but that's what I know of, the differences in the 64, 5, 6, and 7s. Okay, till the next one.